A Bit Lit's A Day Out at Shakespeares Theatre is brought to you by the past. The past. There's more of it every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to A Bit Lit's launch event, A Day Out at Shakespeares Theatre. I'm Andy Kesson. I'm a middle-aged white man with dark hair, brown glasses, and a brown beard. I am wearing a white jumper, though, with Snoopy on it, though you can't quite see that.
I'm Jimmy Tucker. I describe myself as a white man in his 50s with brown hair, short beard and glasses.
So welcome. This is our first experiment in sharing the worlds of research and performance as we take you on a journey to Shakespeare's Theatre. If anyone would like to make use of the audio description, it's on the bottom right of the toolbar, and it's the third option down to turn on audio description with S Grange. We've also, as you can see, got captions on and BSL translation. Do please drop us a line if any of those things are not working for you. We're enormously excited to have this first event to introduce A Bit Lit's new offering of events and courses. We hope to offer events and courses on topics of any kind, and we're keen to grow what we offer with you, our audience. So do please be in touch with us about topics you'd like us to cover, any access needs that we could cover better. We really want to learn with you about how to do this better. And we're so excited to create this space in which we can celebrate creativity and research and ideas and learning of all kinds. Through this event, we'll be reminding you of our hashtags A Bit Lit and Shakespeare Day Out, and we'll be reminding you of our follow-up course, How to Make an Elizabethan Theatre. We are reliant on you, our audience, in order to be able to pay our wonderful contributors. So I'm sorry if we keep promoting ourselves to you, but we would love you to spread the word and let people know about what it is that we're doing. So thank you very much in advance for that. But Jimmy, we're off on a trip to the theatre with Shakespeare. What are you excited about?
Oh, I'm excited about everything. I think in the next 2 hours, I've got my immersive props here, as we suggested, an orange, some rosemary and some wood, plus a lot of other things. I'm looking forward to choosing my seats in the theatre, because I think it's quite a big space, isn't it? And I'm really looking forward to seeing our improv troupe, who are going to be guided by you, our audience, into making a play, an early modern play. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that. I've seen some rehearsals of that, and they are superb.
They are, and we're also really excited to take you with Callan Davis and Heather Knight to the Curtain Playhouse itself. The Curtain is the most important discovery, I think, in Shakespeare studies in the last century, found by Heather Knight, and Callan Davis from the Before Shakespeare Project has done some really glorious work on the Playhouse. And they will be taking you into the Curtain Playhouse, which I think will be the first time that there's been a kind of public viewing of the actual space of the curtain itself in quite that way. So we're really excited to share that too. There's a program included in the welcome email that you've had if you want to follow along with the order of events. But for now, we'll go to our first part of the event, which is a welcome and introduction from Simon Russell Beale and Emma Smith. We wanted our introduction to come from two people who are at the top of their game in our respective professions of an academic world and a theatrical world. But what's particularly important for us with Simon and Emma is that in addition to being on top of their game, they're incredibly kind and welcoming to people coming into the profession for the first time. So for us, they really help to foreground our own commitment to kindness and equality when it comes to engaging with the worlds of learning and performance.
Hello, I'm Simon Russell Beale. I'm here with Emma Smith, and just to describe myself, I'm got a white beard and white hair. That's about all you can see at the moment, is my white beard and my white hair. So anyway, lovely to be on this camera, and yes, let's get talking.
Hello, I'm Emma. I have got brown, messy hair, no beard as far as I know, and I'm wearing my new glasses. And we're talking today about this really exciting concept, really brilliant concept, actually, going to the theatre in around 1600. So we're off, Simon, arm in arm. What are you looking forward to?
The thing, what I want to find out first is what's on offer in terms of plays. And my limited knowledge, 1600, I think Hamlet had just been written. Is that right? So
Yes.
it would have been a new play.
Yep.
So we could be arm in arm off to see Hamlet.
Off to see Hamlet.
In the first production.
So do you think would we be on a date?
We're on a
Indulge
date.
me.
Yeah,
We're
it's
on a date. Going to
it's
see
a first
Hamlet.
date. So it's
First
so
date.
it's slightly nervous. Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm not sure you like me. But anyway, we're on a date.
We're on a date and we're off
I've
to
said,
Hamlet.
Emma, let's go off to Hamlet to see this new show. What time of day would we meet if we were on a date?
So would we go to an ordinary or a tavern or something beforehand and have a little sniff?
Well, let's say I live in North London, and so do you,
Yes.
or north of the river.
Yeah, north of the river. So maybe we would meet. I don't know if I'm a woman, which is perhaps too existential for quite this conversation. But if I am, maybe it's quite racy for me to be going on this date on your arm. So maybe we might have a drink somewhere a bit more salubrious than in Southwark.
Would it be racy?
We don't really know how many women went to the theatre or how many respectable women like myself would have gone to the theatre. That's a bit of a question mark, I think, until the indoor theatres start to pitch themselves a bit more towards a female audience or a mixed audience.
So we're crossing London Bridge, the only bridge in London. Is that right?
That's right. The only bridge across the Thames, or we could take a boat.
Well, let's say we're sort of middle income. So we might get a boat, we might cross the bridge, and then we're going into Southwark. And I'm interested in whether it's a racy date. I've always imagined Southwark to be a little bit dubious as an area to be hanging around in. Was that right?
Well, I think so. It's got that slightly, when you cross the state border in America and there are all the liquor stores lined up immediately to take advantage of the tax, and there's a strip joint or there's something. I'm not saying Southwark was exactly like that, but there's a feeling of it being beyond the limits, beyond the purview of the city fathers, maybe. So maybe it is quite a racy place to be going, but certainly it's a journey, isn't it? We're not just popping around the corner. We're making some quite specific journey across out of our living environment.
And we're the performance is in the afternoon. Is that right?
Yeah.
In the daylight. So I've said to you, let's meet at midday and let's go and have a bite to eat in Southwark.
Yes.
And where would you eat?
So do you eat at an ordinary or a tavern? An ordinary, I think, is where you can get food. So I think we probably, we'll toddle along to one of those places along by the river.
And will we be surrounded by brothels? And bear baiting is the other thing that was that very evident down there, and cockfighting?
Yeah, I think there must have been 2 or 3 of these amphitheatre type buildings, one of which is the Globe and one of which was for bear baiting and other kinds of entertainment. So we're making a definite sort of steer along the embankment, aren't we, as it were, or the sort of.
But if for instance, suddenly we found out it was sold out for Hamlet, we could pop along to see a rival company along the river, could we? I think we probably could. I'm not sure an early modern play completely matters that you're there right at the beginning. Do you think? Would that be would that be a heresy? Do you think the most exciting bits? If we were going to Macbeth, we would have missed an exciting bit if we weren't there for the first 10 minutes. But if we were going to quite a few plays, there's a slight feeling that they're warming up, maybe waiting for latecomers to take their seats. You could zone in and out of Hamlet in a way, couldn't you? You could, depending on what you quite wanted from going to the play. I don't think everybody will want the same thing from this afternoon, if that's what we were seeing. Not everybody would, some people will be there for the fight, some people will be there for Burbage, some people will be there just on a date and would have gone to anything. It's not, and then there are other things
going on. I've always liked that idea that you could zone in, you could be doing other things, but then there might be moments of absolute attention when suddenly everybody is drawn back to what's happening on stage. And then,
as a middle-income couple that we are, we wouldn't presumably be on the floor of the theatre, would we?
I don't think so. I don't think if you were taking me on a date, you would expect me to stand in the yard, would we, and just be jostled and, subject to ribald remarks from apprentices.
Yeah.
I think you're more classy than that on this date. So I think you'd be paying a couple more pennies, perhaps, to take us up into one of the tiers of seating, covered seating. I think that would be.
And who was on? And there were people on the stage, weren't there? Who were they?
So the Lords' rooms, or in certain theatres, Lords sitting on the stage. I mean, that seems like the forerunner of those, going to the opera to be seen and being a spectacle yourself as a prominent member of the audience. That's a sort of coming thing, perhaps not here in this particular theatre, where.
So they didn't have people sitting on the stage.
I don't think so. So. Yeah, so I wonder whether part of what we'll be talking about, if we chat about the play, is, what do I think of Gertrude, or what do I think of Ophelia, or do they just, do they feel, do I recognize them? Do I relate to them? Are they my focus of interest in this play, or do I not recognize them as being like me in some fundamental sense?
Yes, interesting. The other thing that suddenly occurred to me is, of course, that Shakespeare himself could have been performing.
Yes.
Wasn't there that rumour?
So there's a rumour that he was the ghost, but yeah, you're absolutely right. So in the plays of this period written by Ben Jonson, he is in the cast list. We don't exactly know what he played. So yes, he could be. So you might be able to point him out to me and say, is the author performing? And you can say, yeah, there he is. So we're going to have an absolute whale of an afternoon, aren't we?
Yeah,
I'm really excited about it, but it does bring out how many choices and things there are in this outing that you sort of, come so naturally to us if we were doing it in our own day. But it's actually really interesting to be asked, well, what would we do? And
it must be pretty jostling to leave the Globe after a performance of Hamlet, I would think. So perhaps we slipped out just before, once he died.
That's right.
So
the rest is silence. We could just have nudged each other and said,
it's time to go, Steve.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go now.
So we don't know anything about Fortinbras.
I'm so looking forward to this day at the theatre with you, Simon. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Well, after that rather racy date between Emma and Simon, we are now moving on with our day and thinking about this trip to the theatre. They've headed south to Southwark, but actually for the rest of this event, we are headed north towards Shoreditch and going, as you know, to the Curtain Playhouse. Before we go any further, I've got an enormous surprise for Jimmy. During lockdown, it's been quite normal for those of us who've changed jobs to end up working with colleagues we've never met in real life. We just know from Zoom. Jimmy, you've been working with William Shakespeare for 30 years, but you've never actually met him. But today is the day. We are going to introduce you to William Shakespeare right now. Willie, are you there?
There he is.
Hello.
Hello.
How does this work? Yes.
Welcome, William Shakespeare.
Yes. Hello. Yes, it's me, William Shakespeare, a handsomely attired Mediterranean man with a luxurious beard and a feather ruff. Yeah.
And speaking live from your office, it looks like.
I am. I'm working on one of my new pieces. I've obviously created many shows, plays and sonnets, and at this point, I think I have 90 sonnets currently, and I think I've certainly got another 64 perhaps in me, and maybe another 20 plays. Who knows? Yes. Anyway, Jimmy, it's lovely to meet you. I hear you're an actor.
I am, and I've worked on quite a few of your plays.
Oh, you have? Were you any good?
I hope so. I think when I started off, I was playing small parts, and if I had one question to ask you, it might be, when you write some more of your plays, would you consider writing bigger parts for some of the smaller roles, if you see what I mean? I've been playing messengers and spear carriers, and it'd be great if there was a play where some of those characters had bigger scenes.
Well, as I like to tell all burgeoning actors who are attempting to make a name for themselves, there are never small parts, just small actors. But I will work on a piece, especially for you, called The Lonesome Ballad of Messenger 4. How about that?
I'm looking forward to reading it.
Yes, maybe we'll workshop it at some point.
I'm going to break up this audition between the two of you and let you know that we're now heading towards three brilliant young theatre historians who are going to tell us a bit more about the theatre of your time, William.
Oh, you mean today?
Right now.
Yes, well, where are they?
Well, if you can believe it, they're coming right now. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Sarah, and I'm going to be talking to you about where you are in 1600. So really, the answer to that question is a whole range of places, which I'll describe. Outdoor theatres, indoor theatres, stately homes. You might be in a pub. You might be in a university hall. You might be in a City of London Guildhall. You might be in an Inns of Court hall, or you might be at the Royal Courts. I'm going to stick to two of those venues, two of the most important ones, outdoor theatre and indoor theatre. The key thing to remember is that you are somewhere, probably in London, either built specifically for the performance of plays or temporarily dressed and set for play performance. And this is crucially a really exciting change from at the beginning of the 16th century, because before this time, players were often itinerant, moving from town to town and adapting from venue to venue, even regularly performing in outdoor spaces like market squares or fields. As you can imagine, it was pretty hard to make a living that way in such uncontrollable spaces. How do you manage entry into a field, for example, paid entry? It was also tough not to have reliable and continuous stage architecture to rely on and indeed thrive on. So the radical change of this time was the establishment of permanent playing spaces, either bespokely built or adapted in early modern London. And this was a result of London's exponential population and economic boom. So where are you? I'm going to describe two types of place. So firstly, let's imagine that you're a Londoner who finds yourself free on an afternoon and looking for some entertainment. You might take a boat across the river to London's South Bank, or you might walk east to London's Shoreditch or Clerkenwell, a busy walk through a bustling city. When you arrive in either location, the south bank of the river or the east of the city, you'll find yourself in greener, slightly less developed urbanscape. And you are standing in front of a large and high building, possibly rounded, but perhaps also square or rectangular. The walls are whitewashed. Stepping inside is a visual treat. The interior white walls have been painted. There are at least 2 tiers of seating. The full plethora of London society and the range of their colours, materials, sights and smells and noises are right here. You face a large stage with at least 2 and possibly 3 doors for the actors to enter, trapdoors above and below the stage. And the stage is highly decorated. It reminds you perhaps of the interior of a Catholic church or a jewel box or a beautiful picture. Above the stage entrances, there is a balcony. The centre is free, presumably for the actors, and to the left and the right, you'll find the wealthiest audience members seated and dressed to the nines. You decide not to sit, but rather to join the rough and tumble around the stage, standing as a groundling. You elbow your way to the front and get the best view. Second possibility, you're a law student at one of the Inns of Court, and you fancy a break later on in the afternoon, so you make your way a short walk in the heart of the city to a small indoor theatre situated either in the busy complex of St. Paul's Cathedral, or you decide on a bigger indoor theatre situated in the former monastery complex, the Blackfriars. Either way, you're looking forward to seeing a company of boy actors. At Paul's and the Blackfriars, you enter a first floor space. At the Blackfriars, the theatre has been constructed in what had been the largest hall in medieval London used for parliamentary meetings. The building has a stone exterior with possibly original stained glass windows. Like the outdoor theatres, but to an even greater extent, you are in a highly decorated space, and it's beautifully and extensively lit by candlelight, both stage and auditorium. The affluent audience, who are paying a premium for this smaller venue, are dressed to impress in clothes that glitter. They've taken advantage of the warmth and the shelter of indoor rather than outdoor theatre. If the stage of the outdoor theatre is like a jewel box, then the whole indoor space is like stepping inside that jewellery. Highly decorated, carved and painted surfaces, possibly some metallic finishes as well. But the stage in front of you is in many ways similar to the outdoor theatre, just at a smaller scale. So you'll find the same architectural features, 2 to 3 doors, trapdoors above and below, a balcony. But on this cramped stage, there are also a group, perhaps as many as 12, of young fashionable men who paid more to sit up close and personal to the stage action and to show themselves off to the rest of the audience. So to sum up, it's 1600, so you are somewhere specific where you paid the actors for entry. In a unique development for English theatre, you might be somewhere expressly built for the art of performance. And you're either in an outdoor or an indoor venue. This will affect many things: temperature, smells, noise, sound, but also size of audience, scale of stage and auditorium, whether you're seated or you're standing. And you'll be in a highly decorated space, looking at or inside the jewel box, and you'll be seeing a play that can rely on some standard architectural stage features.
Hi, my name is Brandy, and I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about who would be in a theater that Sarah has already so expertly introduced. Could someone like you, who are now in our audience, have been a part of a crowd watching an early modern theatrical performance? The answer is yes. There's more research to be done to determine details of exact audience makeup, but the audience for early plays was far more diverse than you might first think. Firstly, audiences, the word for which derives from the Latin word audere, or to listen, might also be called spectators, from the Latin spectare, meaning to look. They were people who came to the playhouse or theater to experience a performance. Sarah's already told you that plays occurred in a variety of locations, at court, in country houses, outdoor open theaters like the Globe, or smaller indoor theaters like Blackfriars. They happened at universities like Oxford or Cambridge, or places of learning and work like Inns of Court and local pubs. What this means is that audiences could come from all walks of life. Attending the theater was not something that only a certain kind of person could do. People might have been interested in seeing the goings-on of the theater as much as the plays themselves, or they might have wanted to bask in the talent of their favorite tragic or comedic actors, or concentrate on the words or stories of their favorite playwrights. Remember, it was not just Shakespeare or the theater company he wrote for, called the King's Men, who produced many of the plays you might be most familiar with. There were all sorts of theatrical performances to be a part of. To help you begin to get a better idea of who these audience members could be, I'll give you a bit more detail about possible audience members. I just ask that you remember that these are only a few of the types of people who could be in the audience at a theater. According to scholar Romola Notal, attorneys and other people who lived or worked at Inns of Court comprised a large part of the populace who like to see plays. So the next time you hear the first thing we do, let's kill all of the lawyers, and someone connects it to Shakespeare, recall two things. The first, in Henry VI, Part 2, Dick the Butcher is trying to unravel the people who work to keep justice alive, ethical judges and attorneys. The second, there were a lot of lawyers who went to the theater. So think about how law and lawyers are talked about in plays, both for good and for ill. Sex workers, at the time called prostitutes or courtesans, they went to the theater perhaps to enjoy performances, but also to meet potential clients. They were not likely a large portion of the audience. But if you read an anti-theatrical writer who also happened to be a not so successful playwright, Stephen Gosson, they were. He complains about audience members opening a, quote, general market of bawdier, where, quote, every wanted in his paramour, every man in his mistress, every John and his Joan, every knave and his queen are there first acquainted and cheapen the merchandise in that place, which they pay for elsewhere as they can agree. Fellow writers were also in the audience, including Thomas Lodge, who writes about a ghost calling for vengeance, a figure that seems to have been familiar on the Elizabethan stage. He recalls how he saw a pale-visored ghost which cried so miserably at the theater, like an oyster wife, Hamlet, revenge. Sherry Sullivan notes how later audiences of the play use that same ghost in Hamlet as a cultural reference point, as a shared experience. While early modern London was not nearly as racially or ethnically diverse or populous as it is today, it did have some variety of people living there, and they could have participated in theatrical culture. Thanks to groundbreaking research on people of color initiated by scholars Imtiaz Habib and Duncan Salkeld, we've learned about a Black family called the Reasonables who lived and worked close to a theater called the Theatre in the 1580s and 1590s. It is perhaps reasonable to assume that they may have been a part of the audience too. As scholarly research continues, we'll learn more about the people who like to go to see plays and perhaps even know why they like to go. Keep learning with us on A Bit Lit to find out.
Thanks for that, Brandy and Sarah. My name's Elizabeth Tavares, and I'm going to chat a little bit about what might have happened when you entered a playhouse. On a trip to England in the autumn of 1599, the Swiss physician Thomas Platter and his brother Felix attended two performances capturing the hallmarks of playgoing at the end of the 16th century: the Wherry across the Thames, the thatch of an outdoor playhouse, the early afternoon performance time, cross-dressing a substantial cast, and a jig. After lunch, Platter recorded in his diary, taking in, quote, the tragedy of the first emperor Julius Caesar, end quote, possibly by William Shakespeare or one of his contemporaries. So taken by the experience, quote, on another occasion in the suburb of Bishopsgate, if I remember, end quote, they again took in a meal and another play. Thus daily at 2 in the afternoon, London has 2, sometimes 3 plays running in different places, competing with each other, and those which play best obtain most spectators. How much time then they may merrily spend daily at the play, everyone knows who has ever seen them play or act. If Platter's personal history of watching is anything to go by, A Day Out at the Theatre may not have been one, but 2 plays, including a bit of travel, negotiating an ever-changing climate, and a few snacks. Early modern England used the repertory system to structure theatre-going experiences like that of Platter. Performing a different play up to 6 afternoons a week, Elizabethan players might have had upwards of 20 different parts in hand at a given moment. Playing companies typically rented playhouses in 1 week to 6 month periods, during which time one might attend a performance by the Lord Strang's troupe to see spectacular pyrotechnics and racialized prosthetics, or a Lord Admiral's play for stories of the ancient world requiring props of epic scale. By contrast, traveling around the country with Queen's players offered feel-good historical fictions trimmed with tumbling, specialized sound effects, and metonymic blocking to effect compelling battle scenes. The repertory system thus enabled troops to vary their plays, distributing the labor of performance among their members while capitalizing on playgoers' personal genealogies of watching.
Well, that's rather interesting, but I wonder why we are listening to people speak about my time when I'm living it now. They're from the future.
Well, there's quite a lot for us to discover. Lots of things that we don't know about the past, Shakespeare. Things you know, I guess.
Yes, I mean, you could just ask me.
Well, Shakespeare, you'll be pleased to hear that we actually sent Jimmy off as a roving reporter to Shoreditch. The theatres have just opened, as you say. We're in the present day. It is 1600, yes. And we sent Jimmy off to ask the people of Shoreditch what they thought of the theatres.
Oh.
We now go live to Tudor TV. Tudor TV. TV that lets you chew the fat, because unfortunately the rich are chewing the meat.
The playhouses here in Shoreditch are not only pulling in local audiences, but they're attracting a number of foreign visitors too. I'm here with 2 German tourists, asking them what they think of this brand new invention, the playhouse. Firstly, Herr Hassler, welcome to England, and well done for navigating your way here through plague and quarantine. What was your big discovery upon arrival here in London?
In London? there are some peculiar houses that are so made as to have about 3 galleries, one over another, so that a great number of people always come in to see such entertainment. It may well be that they take as much as from $50 to $60 advance, especially when they act anything new, which has not been given before, and double prices are charged. This goes on nearly every day in the week. Even though performances are forbidden on Friday and Saturday, it is not observed.
Thank you, Herr Hassler. Now let's turn to Leopold. What kind of afternoon have you had in London?
On the 23rd, we went across the bridge to the above-mentioned town. There's a round building, 3 stories high, in which are kept about 100 English dogs, with separate kennels for each of them. These dogs were made to fight singly with 3 bears. The second bear being larger than the first, the third larger than the second. After this, a horse was brought in, chased by the dogs, and at last a bull, who defended himself bravely. The next was that a number of men and women came forward from a separate compartment, dancing, conversing and fighting with each other. Also, a man threw some bread among the crowd that scrambled for it. Right over the middle of the place, a rose was fixed, this rose being set on fire by a rocket. Suddenly, lots of apples and pears fell out of it down upon the people standing below. Whilst the people were scrambling for apples, some of the rockets were made to fall down upon them out of the rose, which caused a great fright but amused the spectators. After this, rockets and other fireworks flew out from all corners, and that was the end of the play.
Pretty sure that's not one of your plays, Shakespeare, from what I remember.
I rely on the language and the storytelling rather than all these special effects and props and whatnot. Yes. After 10 years of being in London, I've learnt a few tricks of my own, let me tell you.
Goodness, I don't know what quite how to reply to that. But we're now getting, Shakespeare, to an exciting part of our event where we're turning to the audience and asking you if you will all vote on a particular decision. We're going to have 3 votes across this event, and this is obviously the first one. And before we get to the vote, we're going to ask you to think about travelling across London to Shoreditch to go to the theatre called The Curtain.
So, it's an afternoon in January in London, England. You're free, perhaps because you have the day off, perhaps because you've chosen not to go to work, perhaps because you're too rich to need work, perhaps because you're too poor to be able to find it. You've also chosen not to stay at home, but to do something with the afternoon. So, what do? What activities are available to you in 1600 London? Public entertainment looks a little similar to modern options, but also pretty dissimilar. You could go see if anyone is being publicly executed, for example, at Tyburn. If you're a man, you might go and practice archery in Finsbury Fields, which is the sort of thing the government would like you to do, to keep you fit and improve your potential on the battlefield. You might go drinking. You might go gambling. You might go bowling. You might go to watch the blood sport of animal baiting. You might go to hear a sermon. Sermons were a kind of mass media, lasting for up to 2 hours and sometimes given to 5,000-6,000 people at a time. That's almost 3 times the crowd size of the largest playhouse at full capacity. Indeed, there's a lot of pressure around you at this time to justify going to somewhere frivolous like the theatre when you should and could be in church. The Curtain gets called Venus Palace in this period. Instead of the Christian god, you go to a venue that is all about lust, love, sex and sexuality. Okay, so it's easy to see why people might choose to go to such a place then. But if you're in the City of London, this comparatively tiny place within the city walls, how do you know which theatres are open? How do you know what they are showing? How do you know the way there? How do you get there? Do you walk? Do you go by horse? Do you need to cross the Thames by boat? Who are you with? What do you wear? What's the weather like? Where have you come from? Home? Work? Where are these places and what do they say about you? Do you live in London at all, or are you just passing through? How does this trip to the theatre fit into your day, your week, your year? Is this a one-off, or are you a regular theatre goer? What are you wearing and what's the weather doing? Do you go to one playhouse or several? Are you there for the stories or the actors, or just to be amongst an exciting crowd? Do you actually care about the play at all? What's around you as you travel? What can you see, hear, smell? What else could you be doing with your free time? Early modern plays were advertised in various ways. Printed and handwritten playbills, basically early modern posters, were set up around the city. For anyone who hadn't seen these or couldn't read, the playing company did something much more spectacular. They marched around the city streets, beating drums and tooting trumpets, announcing the show. Trumpets were also played from the playhouse itself. Just like a church bell, the playhouses called to you to tell you they were open. And of course, they were in competition with the churches for your attention.
That was an attempt to get us all thinking about the journey to the theatre we're about to make. Here comes our very first vote. For those of you who are not able to use the voting mechanism, you're welcome to put your answer in the chat and we will count it that way. Here comes the vote. Shakespeare, do you want to talk us through it?
Oh, yes, exciting. Now, apparently, you should see in front of you a question saying, how are we getting to the theatre? You have a single choice, so select wisely. You can either choose a horse or a boat. I get rather seasick. Or, of course, you could walk. So you have horse, boat, or walking. How would you choose to get to the theatre? Make your choices now. This is rather exciting. I normally don't take input on my plays because I think I'm rather good at making decisions that make for the best results. But today we are offering it to you, and I think we have a result coming through any moment now. The winning vote is by boat, it seems. Seems we have some seafarers on board. I should write a play about a boat.
That was great speed there.
Hopefully no tempests come along the Thames. Yes.
Shakespeare, staying outside, we're now going to have our weather and traffic reports of 1600. Brought to you by Tudor TV, and also a word from our sponsors.
Delightful.
The weather on Tudor TV is sponsored by the Earl of Leicester, massive hottie and inventor of cheese. Wouldn't it be nice if the Queen married him? Traffic on Tudor TV is sponsored by the Earl of Oxford, poet, necromancer, and massive weirdo. Wouldn't it be nice if he wrote the works of Shakespeare?
Hello and welcome to the Traffic Report. The word road was first used as a noun during the Elizabethan period, so I'm just going to say it now. Road. Go and use a road if you can. I've no idea what they are, but they sound nice. Now, the new playhouse opening at Blackfriars has caused very great annoyance and trouble, according to a petition from residents. Not only to the noblemen and gentlemen thereabouts inhabiting, but also a general inconvenience to all the inhabitants of the same precinct, both by reason of the great resort and gathering together of all manner of vagrant and lewd persons that pretend to be going to plays, but are actually working all manner of mischief, but also because of the great pestering and filling up of the same precinct at a time of plague. The players also keep playing their drums and trumpets, which greatly disturb and hinder the ministers and parishioners at the time of divine service and sermons. So definitely head down to the Blackfriars and join in the party. Hello and welcome back to the Traffic Report. I'm told that the weather report has informed you that the Thames has frozen over and you do not need to pay the toll. This is obviously fake news. Please do continue to pay the toll because those people are our sponsors. Thank you very much, and back to the studio. Hello and welcome back to the Traffic Report. Now, we've been told by bailiffs assessing the way leading from St Helens Pound to Jebbet Field that the footway leading over the ground of Thomas Wright through his hop yard, which used to be more opener and far more convenient, is now very unfit and unnecessary for any passage. The bailiff's report states that there is no necessity to have or use any such way through the hop yard, but if there should be any way there used, it is very likely there would be much murders and manslaughters to be committed there, if any such ill-disposed persons should travel that way, whereupon it is now agreed that the same way shall be stopped up. So, basically, don't walk there. There have also been reports coming in of bear wards, people who own bears and make a business from putting them on display, have been walking with their bears on the footway, instead of on the Broadway set aside for them. These bears have broken into people's homes and frightened their wives and families, so do avoid these places. We're also being told that the bear wards have annoyed the Queen's Highway with soilage of 2 bears, so don't go stepping in that. And finally, a reminder to be back inside the city walls by the time of curfew. That's all from the Traffic Report. Back to the studio.
So many bears.
So many bears.
Definitely.
Did that weather and traffic look familiar to you, Shakespeare?
Well, no. To be perfectly honest, no. Although I definitely won't be walking through any areas that I shouldn't be walking through. I don't want to be murdered or manslaughtered.
Or end up somewhere smelly.
Exactly. Not very pleasant at all.
Look, talking of smells, we're now going to gather up our aromatic items that we suggested our audience bring along today. And the wonderful Holly Dugan is going to give our noses a scented tour around London.
Hi, Holly. Oh, it's so good to see you. So here we are. We're about to go on this exciting journey to the Curtain Playhouse in 1600, and you're going to help us imagine that by talking through some early modern smells. I know you wanted to start by just offering a trigger warning.
Because one of the things that I love about olfaction is how powerful it is. And so it really is where our body meets the world. Mm-hmm. And so we should always be very attentive to our needs of especially going into this. So smell can trigger all kinds of trauma associations. Smell can trigger migraines. They can, of course, we have different abilities to smell. Some of us can smell some molecules better than others. It's unique to our experience of the world. And that's what makes it such a vital research topic, but it can also make it such a precarious experience. So do be advised to really just take care, just feel free to either smell along with us or perhaps just enjoy it through your other sensory modes.
Absolutely. And I'm also aware we're doing this after 2 years of COVID, which has ravaged so many people's ability to smell. So it also feels like an especially kind of triggering time to talk about the senses. But what's so important for me and why we're so lucky to speak to you is that we so often come at history via words and via language. And with the archaeologists we're working with at this event, we'll be thinking about objects and what we can see, but we so rarely employ some of those other senses. So I'm really excited, as you say, to think about olfaction, to think about the process of smelling and what it can tell us. So without further ado, where should we start?
Oh, well, let's start with the orange.
Brilliant. Okay, so those of you playing along, do join in if you'd like to. So I'm smelling something almost Christmassy, perhaps a little citrusy. I would say, in fact, something quite orangey and quite pithy.
So one of the things that's so fascinating about oranges is that we, I think, culturally approach them as a flavor as well as an aroma. And what we know is that the flavor really stems mostly from the associations that we draw from its aroma. We know that this is one of, at least from textual sources, that this is one of the choice snacks for theater goers. And again, they're very transportable and they have a host of sensory associations attached to them. And so I love it because it brings us into the 3D atmosphere of theater going in the Renaissance. So we know from Hamlet that they're associated with the women who yell outside of the theaters, like hawking their wares of fruits for snacks. And so they create an auditory association. We know from other Shakespeare references that they are a visually important metaphor. At a certain point in Much Ado About Nothing, Claudio accuses Hero of being like a rotten orange, visibly beautiful on the outside and rotten inside. And that's about a visual marker, but it also, I think, gets to these other sensory associations, because one of the things that we know about oranges, and I'm sure anybody who has cooked knows this, that, most of the aroma power lives in the rind. And because of that, a rotten orange, it takes a very long time for a rotten orange to show up visibly. And that because the rind is where the aroma is, there's no smell that marks it as off. So it's very hard to notice which orange is ripe and which one is rotting.
I guess you've cued us into there the way oranges are strongly associated with women. So they're being used misogynistically and Much Ado About Nothing, but also that in the playhouse, it's a snack you might have, but even just to get into the playhouse, you're surrounded by what we're told in Hamlet are women selling you oranges. So even if you don't want an orange, you're going to have the smell of it. And again, it's associated there socially with female business people.
Maybe we should go for rosemary because
I was trying to find mine. It's behind my ear.
Rosemary has all kinds of cultural associations in the Renaissance. Rosemary for remembrance. It's a sign of betrothal and happiness. And it has a lot to do, again, with really this sense of health that's infused in the herb itself, both in terms of culinary, but also through its scent associations. But its association with health, particularly in the 1590s on, started to accrue a kind of scent memory of danger, specifically around plague preventatives. So one of the things they believed at the time was that the plague was airborne, and that again, one of your best ways to defend yourself, especially if you're navigating one of those crowded areas of London that we know the playhouses were located in, one of the things you wanted to have is a host of scent ingredients in order to protect your nose if need be. And this one was readily available and was often recommended by city health officials. Now, so what we know is that it's this incredibly poignant experience where cultural and collective experience of disease changed the scent associations rather quickly around this healthy, vital, invigorating smell that also carries with it a visceral reminder of incredible vulnerability and precariousness because of plague. And we can sort of see that showing up in all kinds of references to rosemary in Shakespeare's plays. And I think for audience members at that moment, it would have brought those associations with it.
It's fascinating.
So Rosemary for Remembrance is both about grief, about love, but also about grief, about mourning in that moment.
Yeah, and we're living through a period where we're all being reminded to wear face masks. And I guess this is the 16th century face mask from what you're telling us.
It is. Yeah. It is.
What next, please?
Well, do we want to talk about bodies?
Oh, let's do that.
So I've asked you to bring cumin. Again, another flavor association primarily for us, but also one with a strong olfactory signature. How do you describe this smell, Andy?
I'm bad at describing anything. When I go to wine tastings, I always feel like what I can smell is wine, and I definitely feel like I can smell cumin. Again, I feel like all three of our smells, the last two smells have been quite woody. And there is a kind of woody, almost sulfury quality to cumin, more like burnt wood, perhaps. I don't know. What do you smell?
Well, I smell, of course, delicious associations with spice now. So I sort of think of warm, earthy, peppery dishes. And with cumin, one of the things so fascinating that I wanted to talk about it with everyone who's about to take this journey is that one, it reminds us that, again, for me, I always associate it with dinner, like I want a nice curry. And, one of the reasons I think I wanted to bring this in is to remind us that the theater were in the most diverse spaces of London and that there was a wider mixture of people working and living and attending those spaces. And so they were heterogeneous in every way that we now think of our entertainment culture. So that's really important. And a lot of that global culture is suffused into the luxury of the theater, right? But one of the things that's super interesting about cumin in modern perfumery is that it is a scent association that, because it's earthy, peppery, warm, it's often described as mimicking the smell of people, of our bodies, and particularly sweat.
So the cumin is human. I never thought I'd hear this, but it's blown my mind. So thank you very much. Where next?
Well, shall we go to rose?
I have to say, Holly, I've got some rose water here, which primarily to me smells of alcohol. So if I'm not especially sober through the rest of this conversation, then I apologize.
We often think about the smells of the past, and it's very easy to go to negative associations, right? That there's different hygiene standards. And therefore, if we were to time travel back, we would be overwhelmed with how bad things smelled. And I want us to suspend that for a minute, because smell doesn't work that way, right? We're really attuned to it. We learn over time to pay attention to some smells, to ignore others. We learn, again, human sweat can be off-putting, but it can also be really enticing. Again, it's really, there's no such thing as a good or bad smell. There's just a set of associations that are around it. But one thing that I personally find to be an amazing smell, an amazingly beautiful smell, and one that was novel to the technology of the Renaissance, that was a real showstopper in the 16th century, is rose, especially rose attar or, essential rose. And of course, the most beautiful rose fragrance is that of the damask rose. And again, it's reminding us, just as cumin did, that we are drawing on a global culture, even in the Renaissance. But what I'm often struck with when I'm studying smells of the past is how many authentic, non-synthetic perfume materials they had at their access. And of course, we know with all of the sense of royal power, all of the visual signification of the Tudor rose, it also had, because of the technology of the 16th century, had an olfactory component to it. And the theaters, you know, are often in spaces that had lovely gardens nearby. And so as we're journeying to these theaters, we would have encountered the smell of food culture, the smell of danger, the smell of other people, but we would also, this is my fancy rose perfume, we would also smell incredible beauty. And I think that's really important to remember. So let's enter the theater space, shall we?
Yes.
Okay, so the reason I wanted to do coins is, one, it's this amazing, I have my US penny.
Yeah.
And what I want you to do is I want you to really get
I've got a bunch of pennies.
ham-fisted about your coins. I want you to touch them. I want you to rub them. So one of the things that's interesting about metal is that it doesn't on its own have a smell that we can readily identify. But once it interacts with our skin, woo, can you smell it?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So of course there's that sensory, theater is about profit making. And so I don't want us to overlook this powerful sensory object. But that smell that we just created by interacting with metal is also the same smell that we experience when blood hits our skin. And so one of the things that this object allows us to do is to think about that economic aspect of theater going, but it also allows us to start thinking through spectacle and all of the ways in which our senses were used in creating spectacle, which we think of usually, you know, at least in Renaissance theaters, we think of definitely being multisensorial in terms of our vision and in terms of audio culture, music culture, but it's also engaging visceral reactions, and blood was one of them. And the blood, again, on skin is, and again, what we think of when we think of the human element of theater. Again, that sort of gore factor is part of that visceral experience. And our coins, that's what we're paying for. We're paying for that simulation.
And I love that way you encourage us to think about human plus metal, which feels very Terminator. And that's the first time we've been asked to think about the crossover between human and object in that way, I think.
So I asked you to bring your most perfumey perfume, yes?
Yeah, I've got a kind of very peppery tea-based aftershave.
And I brought one that has civet.
Wow.
It's strong. So one of the things we know is that, again, those very fancy people were coming to the theater and they were decked to the nines, and they certainly included a lot of perfume. We know from snide comments of contemporaries of Shakespeare that the theater is a space that's defined by certain kinds of consumption and smells, and marking these very elite spectators pretty much for their garish fashion, right? They're smoking too much. Their perfume is too volatile. It smells too much of civet, too much of really perfumey perfume. And so again, we're getting into this crowded space, and we can smell other people's sweat, but we can also smell, as you know, if you're in a metro experience, the perfume of someone nearby. And that can really be overwhelming, especially when we're adding it in to a collective funk. I want us to do wood chips because it's hard not to talk about the theater as a wooden O, of a space that's defined by the materials that created it, that are so much about the acoustic environment, but it's also really interesting to me is that theaters are construction zones. Yes. And there's always this sense of turnover and building. For us, it kind of leads really nicely to that pine air freshener. If you could put those two together. One hypothesis, of course, is that it's pine boards that are part of the architecture of these theaters. But we also know with pine, I mean, what do you associate with pine, the smell of pine?
I guess kind of that resiny walking through a wood kind of smell. So it feels to me like a smell which is very unurban. If I've left the city and I've gone into the wood.
Yes. And I think that that's part of what Pine is doing in the Renaissance as well. It's this sense that you're in a different kind of zone, one that is completely different than the urban environment around it. And then really, we know that there's certain kinds of props that are meant to create that wooded experience. If we add it all together,
My goodness.
jingle your coin with the smoke in the air, I think we're getting at a little bit of what it might have been like to be an embodied person, an embodied playgoer in that environment.
Holly, I love that. Thank you so much. And I'm thinking about how Macbeth starts with witches entering to thunder and lightning, and you can't have those things technologically in the period without the smell of sulfur. And of course, all that anyone talks about in the first half of that play is so foul and fair a day I have not seen, the extraordinary smells. And then suddenly we get to Macbeth's castle about half an hour later, and one of the characters says, "Oh, what a fresh smell there is here." So a sense of the sulfur smell, which is then lifted through the gap in where the ceiling would otherwise be.
Yes, and really about that opening, which is so much about sensory confusion, that we're seeing really tremendous design, I think, in these play texts and in these theater practitioners.
Yeah. Tremendous design is a fantastic phrase, and you've given us so many fantastic phrases to think about early modern theatre through this. I love the idea of theatres as construction zones, for example. And I think, yes, you've helped us think about how the people who run the theatres, people that go to the theatres, and the people who make money in the kind of small economy around the theatres, like orange sellers, how they all orchestrate, manufacture, play with, use, exploit, and just exist in a world of very particular kinds of smells. There has been nothing smelly about this conversation, Holly. Thank you so very much.
It didn't stink. Thank you. It's such a delight.
Thank you. We are now heading towards a 5-minute interval and comfort break. Shakespeare, my goodness, how are you doing?
I'm enjoying my little oranges. And thank you for sending me these Italian-inspired seasoning, Asda.
I think Asda is a Latin word. I'm not sure what that means. Before we head to the interval, I just wanted to say thanks to everyone who's joining in the chat. I'm really enjoying that. So do keep that up, and just remind you as well, do tweet along should you wish to. We really appreciate you spreading the word. And now we're heading to the interval.
We're going to take a 5-minute break. We are halfway through our afternoon going to the theatre. And when we go back, we'll be arriving at the Playhouse and having a look inside, choosing our seats. And we'll also be making some decisions on the play that we're going to see. We will ask our troupe, our improv troupe, to perform a kind of early modern play using your voting suggestions. So we'll see you in 5 minutes.
See you soon.
Tudor TV is sponsored by Lord Strange. Yes, Strange. It's actually a very normal name. For more from A Bit Lit, sign up to our mailing list, subscribe on YouTube, and sign up for our follow-on course, How to Build an Elizabethan Theatre. Full details at abitlit.co. Tudor TV is sponsored by Lord Strange. Strange? We're told it's actually pronounced Lord Strange, but that just seems strange.
Welcome back, folks. Apologies for the dad jokes. We are now headed for our second vote in our event. So we are now getting to the Curtain Playhouse itself and ready to make some decisions.
So here we are arriving at the Curtain Playhouse in Shoreditch.
Oh, so pleased we managed to bump into each other. It's so hard to meet up without mobile phones, isn't it? Mind you, I don't even know what a mobile phone is. I always think we'll escape the city crowds by heading into Shoreditch. But if anything, things are even more busy here. The playhouses seem to act like magnets, drawing all these crowds in. Surely all these people can't be going to see a show. I hope people are using their rosemary to avoid spreading the plague. Okay, so there's the curtain. How do we get in? In 400 years' time, the archaeologist Heather Knight is going to propose up to 5 different ways people moved in and out of the building. But we need to get in now. We can't wait that long. So let's see if we can find the door. Wow! Smell all those delicious snacks. Shall we grab something quickly? Oh, hello. 2 oranges, 2 beers and 20 oysters, please. Early modern England hasn't had an industrial revolution, so the oysters haven't all been killed off. They're plentiful, which means they're cheap. And they come in their own containers. Totally top quality fast food snacks. Okay, so we're going in. We need to pay a penny at the entrance door. But what would you like to do now? Shall we stand here at no extra cost? Or do we want to move to a seating area? And if so, which floor do you want to go to? We could even hire a private area or sit on the stage. For each decision we make, we need to pay an extra penny, so the cost soon adds up. We're seeing a lot of women today, aren't we? The person selling us food was a woman, and so are all the people taking entrance fees at the curtain door. Sure is very female at the all-male Shakespearean stage. But we're here, finally. We made it. It's curtain up at the curtain. But what kind of audience members are we going to be? Are we going to watch the show in silence? Are we going to cheer, jeer and heckle? In 400 years' time, people sit in darkness and silence at the theatre. We are much more like audiences at a football or boxing match. We take sides, we talk, we scream, we get involved. But maybe we're not really here for the show at all. Maybe we're just here to be social, to hang out, to see friends, to be seen. Maybe we won't stay for the whole show. Maybe we've arrived halfway through. Maybe we're here to pick someone up for sex or to pick their pocket. It's all up to you.
So welcome back. I think Shakespeare might be here too. Yes. Hello,
Yes.
Shakespeare.
My goodness. That does sound interesting. We've got lots of choices to be had.
We do, relayed to us through slightly echoey audio, so apologies for that. But now here we are arriving at the curtain and we've got some choices to make. Here comes our first vote.
Very exciting. Let's see what options we have to... Right. What is your choice of snack? Yummy. Now, we have oranges, nuts, or oysters. I know which I would find most satisfying, but which one would you spend some money on? Would it be oranges, nuts, or oysters? Let's see what everyone has decided. And the results are coming in. Oh, nuts! How wonderful. Yes, and appropriate, I'd say.
Here comes choice number 2. So
Now,
we get
once
to find
you've
out.
got your snacks, we need to decide where we're going to sit. And are we going to stand in the pit? Exciting. Public seating, a little bit more, but rather more comfortable, especially for some of the longer pieces. Private seating, well, let's just make sure you're going with someone you should be going with, otherwise you could get caught out. Or are you going to be seating on the stage to be seen by everyone? But it does cost a bit more as well. So will you stand in the pit? Will you take some public seating, take some private seating, or will you sit on the stage? What will your choice be? And the results are in with...
Very split
close
vote.
indeed, but it looks like we have a fan of being groundlings here. We're going to stand in the pit. Indeed. Yes.
I feel like we're learning a little bit more about our audience. They're sort of a group of nut standers. So that's quite a good thing to find out about them. And Shakespeare, we are now off back to our roving reporter, Jimmy. Jimmy, it's time for you to rove. Going back out onto the streets of Shoreditch.
It's a quick journey for him, no doubt.
I'm in Shoreditch, talking to local people about what impact the new playhouses are having upon their lives. So hello to our first guest. Now, you live in this area, and you've had problems with your neighbour, actor James Savage. What's the story here?
James Savage is a very lewd fellow, and liveth by no other trade than playing of stage plays and interludes. And for his lewd and loose life, Savage hath been told, as is credibly reported, to avoid out of the parish, and also because his honest neighbours do so mislike his behaviour that they will not suffer him to dwell there any longer. And Savage braggeth and boasted that he hath such friends as shall compel his neighbours to deal in such sort as pleaseth him.
And now let's go to our next speaker to hear if he's enjoying the current season of plays and performances.
I went to the theatre to see a scurvy play set out all by one virgin, which there proved a free Martin without voice, so that we stayed not the matter.
Here's a question for our next responder. Some people call them players, some people call them actors, but what do you call them?
Some term them comedians, others some players, many pleasers, but I, monsters. And why monsters? Because under colour of humanity, they present nothing but prodigious vanity. These are wells without water, dead branches fit for fuel, cockle amongst corn, unwholesome weeds amongst sweet herbs, and finally, fiends that are crept into the world by stealth and hold possession by subtle invasion.
And now, finally, we have someone who is not a fan of the playhouses. Tell us why.
One player must learn to trip it like a lady in the finest fashion. Another must have time to whet his mind onto tyranny, that he may give life to the picture he presenteth, whereby they learn to counterfeit and so to sin. Therefore, whatsoever such plays as contain good matter are set out in print may be read with profit, but cannot be played without a manifest breach of God's commandments.
Well, you can't please everyone, can you? No.
You really can't. You really can't. I wasn't expecting that last bit with the green screen falling over, so I'm afraid I'm in a fit of giggles over here, rather unprofessionally.
Back at budget.
So we are now heading to a part of the event I'm really excited about, which is Heather Knight, who, as I mentioned at the start of our event, found and dug up the Curtain Playhouse, which, for my money, is the most exciting discovery in the last 100 years of Shakespeare studies, and probably also the most exciting playhouse in Shakespeare in your time, Shakespeare. And we're going to hear from Callan Davis of the Before Shakespeare project, who has been writing and researching brilliantly on the early playhouses.
Well, we'll see how correct they are with their assumptions. Since I'm living in this time, I'll be the judge of how authentic they are.
Fact check.
Hello, Callan.
Heather.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
And standing on a stage in a theatre. Yeah, a kind of space most people think of when they think of theatre, I guess.
Yeah, it's what I grew up watching at school. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen Panto on this stage. So here we are. We've got, what, rectangular space, high stage, curtains. It's a theatre.
A theatre, yeah. And maybe a different type of theatre than the one that we tend to expect if we're thinking of Shakespearean theatre, when spaces like the Globe come to mind.
Oh, you mean those big, round, kind of polygonal buildings?
Yeah, amphitheatre.
Yeah, looks a bit like the kind of Colosseum. But archaeology has shown us that a lot of 16th century theatre actually looked a bit like this. And it's archaeology that's really let us understand what these buildings look like, how they functioned, who used them.
And so we're here today to learn about a space known as the Curtain. The archaeology has really kind of proved revelatory to our understanding of exactly what you're saying, of what kind of spaces people watch plays and other types of play in.
So we're going to talk about archaeology.
Let's do that.
Yeah. See, the problem is, with a theatre, even though playhouse is called house, they actually have different lives to a domestic house. You know, you think of a house, it's lived in by the same people every day, it's lived in every day. But a space like this is cleaned. So there's very little evidence left behind of what happened even yesterday. The last thing that this building was used for was actually a 50th birthday party. So we've got confetti all over the floor. But archaeology can tell us more about, obviously, the fabric of the building. And with the curtain, we're lucky that so much of that has survived. So we actually have the physical remains of the building. And in some spaces, we do have the detritus, I guess, of playgoing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? Because we don't get either in the archival records, so the sort of documents that might say so-and-so owned this building, or somebody was arrested for, I don't know, performing something that they shouldn't have done at a space like the Curtain. But that doesn't get us any closer to these sort of real uses that you're talking about in the kind of confetti that gets left behind. So the work that you're doing on this helps to bring the fabric of this world to life.
It also, I guess, brings to life the everyday, the mundane, that kind of not the odd and unusual, which maybe gets recorded in the historic record. Yeah. So it gives us a much better understanding of how these buildings functioned, who used them, when they were used, and what people went to see there.
Yes, talking of which,
Well, shall we go?
We're stood here on a spot where we have long known there was a theatre roundabout. Because there's clues in sort of archival documents, people talk about it, we know people stage plays here. But there was a kind of assumption about what type of playhouse we might have encountered.
Everybody had assumed, and rightly so, I think, because there's nothing to prove, to say otherwise, that this building was big and round, just like the globe. But when we actually came to dig the site, and we did the main excavation on the site in 2016, what we found were these. And this is the foundations for the stage itself. And these foundations and other elements of the building that remain show us that what we actually had was a rectangular space, about 22 metres wide, maybe 25 metres from the front to the back, and with this really high stage. So you've got the brick foundations, and it would have had timber staging sitting on top of those foundations.
Right, so we're sort of stood here looking up at the stage.
We are looking up at the stage right here. You can imagine in the 1590s the audience standing here watching, say, Romeo and Juliet up on this kind of high stage. And it's a wide stage as well, and it's flanked by these two tiring houses, which are where the actors would have put on their attire. That's where they would have got changed and where they can make their entrances from. We've got wall-to-wall standing, ground level, and the building is 3 stories high. So yeah, it's a big venue.
And we're stood here, as you say, at the yard, looking up at the stage. And one thing we might be looking up at is a colleague of Shakespeare's performing something. But we also might be looking at a different type of entertainment. So you said the stage is 14 metres wide, which I believe is the same width or length as a fencing piste in the Olympics today.
It is. What an exciting thing to see. Fencing. What a brilliant space to fence on. So people came to see fencing displays, as well as what we think of as drama.
I like how this ties into where we first kind of emerged in our conversation, in a hall that was used for all sorts of different activities, sports, tombola, you name it. And here we are at the Curtain, and we're watching what we now regard as classical theatre, but we also might be coming here for the equivalent of a kind of football game in North London.
Or a variety show.
So when we encounter plays from this period, one of the things we think about both as audiences and performers who perform them is where these characters might come on, where we're first introduced to them. Are they coming from a big door at the back? Are they coming out the side? Or in something like, famously in the Hamlet scene with the ghost, is there a kind of noise coming from under the stage? And so I'm really interested as to what the architecture of this space might tell us about how actors moved around such a playhouse.
They've got lots of options in this playhouse. So obviously they can move from those tiring house spaces out onto the stage and move across it. They can also move from one side to the other on the balcony above us. But interestingly, they can disappear off and move underneath the stage. Now, I'll be fine because I'm 5'3", but for you to be under the stage, I think you might need to duck.
I'm really interested in the fact that this is a kind of whole tunnel network of what actors can do in a space, and so there's these kind of hidden joinings and kind of passages and movements that really affords an actor and a company the opportunity to do some exciting stuff, really, with
There's so many options. There are so many options in how you can use this space.
We've heard a little bit about what it's like to move as an actor or performer on this stage, or even a fencer. But of course that would have an impact on the audience too, who are watching it. So if we sort of step, as we kind of are, into the yard itself and look back at where we've just been standing, what does this tell us about the kind of world of the playhouse in this period?
You mean standing down here in amongst the Shoreditch rabble?
Exactly.
We are cheapskates because we haven't paid the extra penny to sit upstairs, but we're really close to the action. It is just there. We can almost touch it.
I like the idea that we're stood in this very spot, and for this reason, with this brilliant kind of access to all these pockets of action that might be going on. I like the idea that the Venetian ambassador, sometime in the 1610s, insisted on standing in this very spot rather than paying the extra penny to be in one of these more expensive, arguably slightly swisher standings, precisely because he wanted to be among the people here and to see this, or and sort of have this experience.
Yeah, he actively chose not to take a seat in one of the expensive boxes, but to be down here and maybe kind of experience this kind of real kind of visceral kind of space. He said he did this because he was hard of hearing, but I think he just wanted to be close to the action.
And it certainly opens up that sense of what your relationship to the stage might be if you bring kind of other sensory engagements with play and drama to it. So I find that one little moment fascinating, and here we are, stood in his footsteps. So here we are outside the theatre, or sort of outside it, but also within its compass. And this building already sat behind an existing building that fronts onto this road here known as the Curtain. And from this very spot, we've got quite a nice way of thinking about where we are in London in, say, the late 1590s.
That's right. We've got basically the city is behind us. We've got more fields, a kind of pleasure ground that's been an open space for leisure for centuries. And of course, behind us is another field, Curtain Close, and that's where this theatre gets its name from. It's not those kind of swishy theatrical curtains, but it's actually the name of the field in which it was built.
And I really like this sense that we have fields there, we have more fields here. From this spot, we get a real sense of all the different journeys that people might make to come to a playhouse like the Curtain and why they might make them. So someone might, lead through somewhere like Moorgate and go up and round past people doing archery, people washing their clothes in the field, and people just walking, as you say, in these open spaces. And they would come here not just to see some of the entertainments we've already talked about, but to do any number of things in quite an adaptable space.
And the brilliant thing about a playhouse is it's always a place to get food and drink. Should we get a drink?
Sounds good.
Can I have a drink?
Certainly, my lady.
Thank you.
I'll put on your tab.
Cheers.
Cheers, Callum. It's a very pleasant afternoon, isn't it? Right here, in the open air, staying away from the cesspit. But yeah, having a drink. We've seen a show.
Yeah.
It's all good, isn't it?
Worst ways to spend a Saturday, I think.
Yeah, and this is definitely the place to have a good time.
But how do you know that we can pick up food and drink on a spot like this?
Oh, that's archaeology. It's shown us that these outside spaces particularly were used for food and drink. So we find lots of pieces of pottery that are from beer jugs and tankards, as well as the kind of the seeds and things from what people were eating. So it's kind of archaeology of having a good time, I guess.
I like that. So, it really joins this inside and outside of the playhouse. But we can't spend all day here.
I guess not. Should we go?
I think we've got a Zoom meeting to attend.
Have we? Better go then. Oh, we haven't made it to the Zoom meeting.
No, but we are back in 2022.
True.
Surrounded by a sort of different sort of curtain, I guess.
They are very different curtains.
Yeah.
But this space doesn't feel as, what's the word? Non-16th century?
Yeah.
Maybe it did.
I think, that sort of sense that we have of what took place in 1600 feels like it could work in a space like this, where we are.
It could very much work on this kind of space. But one thing that isn't working is my glass. It's empty.
It's been 400 years.
Do you think it's evaporated?
I'm parched.
So am I. Should we go?
Let's do it.
Let's get a drink.
Certainly made me thirsty as well. I must say, I'd like to give you my opinion on their research, if that's all right with you.
Please.
Yes. I think that they discovered something that is as correct as it could be.
I mean, we should release that statement to the press. I feel that's very good news. Thank you, Shakespeare.
Mainly because I like to invent new things, and perhaps my way of presenting theatre is more dynamic. And the Curtain is somewhere I've worked somewhat with, but I have my own plans.
Yes, well, you've just opened the Globe down at Southwark. So, yeah, I'm sorry. We've been showcasing your rival theatre. Sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. It's always good to see what the competition is trying to do.
Well, Shakespeare, I'm afraid we're going to annoy you even more now, because one thing that's been really important for us for this event is to think about improvisation as a performance style as well. So with apologies, removing the playwright and removing kind of pre-organized words and text from the show and inviting the actors to make the show for themselves. You are not looking happy right now, but that is how we're going to end our event.
Intriguing.
So we've been asking you, the audience, to vote on our journey to the Playhouse and then where you sit and what snacks you have. The votes that you're about to make will determine the improv that our performers create. You are now going to be the producers of their show, and we're now going to think through how you might make some of those choices for our troupe to act upon.
Okay, so now we turn the tables, and you are no longer an audience member. Now we'd like you to think about being the theatre producer. Now you need to decide what show you want to stage, what special effects you might use, and how else you're going to entice and excite your audience. So what kind of choices do you need to make if you run a theatre in early modern England? Well, the most important thing is that you need to pay your bills and meet your costs. So you want to make as big a profit as possible from your audience. And that means pulling in as big an audience as possible and persuading them to come back for future shows. So, how do you do this? Early modern theatre companies were in fierce competition with each other for audiences. Theatres watched one another, keeping an eye on what shows were on. And you can see modern examples of this at work right now. Marvel and DC Comics are currently in competition with each other. Who can make the most and best movies, TV shows and graphic novels? 20 years ago, Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings movies came out, and Disney raced to start making the Chronicles of Narnia. So as the 21st century started, you had two different film companies competing with each other by filming two fantasy novels written by Oxford University colleagues in the middle of the 20th century. In the wake of the Harry Potter books and films, the BBC started a new TV show about Merlin. Now, Merlin was usually thought of as an old man with a beard, but suddenly he was young. He had tousled black hair and glasses and looked and acted much like Harry Potter. Now, in all of these cases, competition drives creativity. Exactly the same thing happens in early modern theatre. Shakespeare's many history plays are responses to early experiments by his colleagues in this new genre. And some of his most famous plays, Hamlet, King Lear, Henry V, are rewrites of other people's recent plays. And other people copy and rewrite Shakespeare's rewrites too. Hamlet inspires a whole slew of revenge tragedies, many of them brilliant. And sometimes Shakespeare's characters, like Hamlet himself, make random cameos in other people's plays. So you need to tell stories that hold people's attention, that respond to the needs of the market, that capitalize on pre-existing audience interests. Stories that are good on a poster. And you need to put those stories on stage in ways which wow and excite your audiences, so they go away wanting more. What special effects, what props, what costumes might you use? Here are some early modern options for you to vote on, and the choices we make together will dictate the show our improvisers stage. It's time for you to take control. And we'll ask you to vote on these choices, and our brilliant improvisational performers will then build an early modern play around the choices that you make. Good luck.
Well, it's exciting indeed. And as a producer, I know the options that you make will have a huge impact on the enjoyment by the audience. So, to help guide us through this options process, I would like to invite to talk to me the lovely Steve Purcell, who is clearly at one of my favourite places in the world. I recognise that.
Oh, hi, Willie. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm a very big fan.
Oh, definitely. I'm not surprised. I'm rather well known, don't you know?
Of course, although not so big a fan. And I'm afraid that we're going to do one of your plays right now because, in fact, our improvisers are going to make up a new early modern play on the spot. Obviously, for most actors, the prospect of launching straight into a play where you don't know any of the lines, you don't know what happens in the plot, would be their worst nightmare. But that's exactly what our fearless improvisers are about to do now. They're going to make up a play on the spot based entirely on audience suggestions.
Well, that is interesting. And
Would you like to meet them,
Willie?
Willie?
That style of working before to create a play, I'm sure.
Would you like to meet the performers?
I would love to. Let me see them. Let me see these
Right,
wonderfully
here
talented
they are. I'm very pleased to introduce them. You're going to see them and they're going to wave at you right now. So here is Lisa Ronigan.
Hello, Lisa. You look splendid.
And who's next? Francesca Reed.
Oh, Francesca. Wonderful. Yes.
And Monica Gaga.
Ah, Monica. Lovely. Yes.
And we're going to hear a lot more from Lisa, Francesca, and Monica in just a moment when they start the play that you, the audience, are going to choose the title, the genre, and the lead character for right now.
Exciting stuff. So we have our options coming up any moment now, I believe. Is that right, Steve?
That's right. We've got a poll. So the very first poll is about to come up.
So,
and it's the genre.
It's very important to choose a genre when you are producing a play. So we have the options of comedy, history, tragedy, pastoral, or tragicomedy. Now, Steve, some people may not know some of these terms. For example, pastoral, what would that be?
So a pastoral play is going to be a play that's probably set in a forest. It's going to feature lots of shepherds. It's going to be a sort of rural idyll.
And tragicomedy is, I assume, a mix of tragedy and comedy for those that don't know.
That's exactly right. It's going to be a blend of the conventions of comedy and tragedy in some combination. Do you have a favourite genre, Willie?
Yes. But we are not here to discuss my options. We're here to find out what the lovely audience has decided. So hopefully you've selected your polls and the results are about to be revealed to us. And we have a result with tragicomedy.
Brilliant. Good choice. Good choice, everyone. Tragicomedy is a brilliant genre and probably the biggest challenge for the improvisers. So that's going to be really exciting. And we have another choice for you to make, don't we?
Wonderful. Of course, we can't just have a genre. We need to know who the protagonist will be. Now, there's lots of fun names here. We have Captain Whirlpool, Peter Piebaker, Young People, Greedy Gut, Nickel Newfangle, Small Ability, Master Snip, a tailor, Master Monopoly, Master Possibility, and Lady Perfect. What delightful protagonist names. Wonder which one our lovely audience will go for. Do you have a favourite, Steve?
Oh, I couldn't possibly influence the audience's decision like that. I'm reminded by Andy in the chat, these are all actual names from actual early modern plays. So,
was that not commonly known?
No. These plays, unlike your own, Willie, have many of them fallen out of fashion.
My play's fallen out of fashion?
Oh no! Yours are still very, very popular. We have a result, I think.
The results are here. So it seems that Small Ability is, in fact, our protagonist. Small Ability. Well, it doesn't seem that our actors will have small ability, but they'll be talking about Small Ability, our protagonist. So there we go.
Brilliant. So we're seeing a tragicomedy featuring as our central character, Small Ability. And we've got one more poll, haven't we? Before
This is so exciting. I very much enjoy this. The title. Wonderful. Now, this can make or break a production, you know. The marketing is very important. There's so many options to go and see a play in London these days. So options are, for title, The Slippers, The Woman on the Rock, Captain Mario, Lusty London, Jig of Rustic Wooing, also called The Wooing of Nan, Christmas Comes But Once a Year, I Pray You Be Not Angry, For I Will Make You Merry, The World Tossed at Tennis, Wine, Beer, and Ale Together by the Ears, or The Parliament of Bees. They are some splendid titles, aren't they, Steve?
They are brilliant titles, and it's sad that we can't choose all of them, but there has to be a single winner, doesn't there? And that's going to be the title of the play that we're about to watch. So I think we have a result.
Let's see. Well. It seems The Parliament of Bees is the winning title. So a tragicomedy with protagonist Small Ability called The Parliament of Bees.
And off we go. Act one. Oh, and before we start, I'm terribly sorry. Before we start, I should say there's going to be a small break in between each of the acts. We're going to do 3 acts in which I will come back for more suggestions. So keep an eye on the chat, because I'll be asking for your suggestions during the improv in the chat, and then I'll announce some of the results, just anything that's come up in the chat in between the acts. So I'll see you very shortly. Over to our improvisers for the tragicomedy of The Parliament of Bees. Enter Small Ability.
Really?
It is I, Small Ability's mother ability. I died tragically of 1,000 bee stings. It was my fault. I have an addiction to honey. But Small Ability needs to rise up and become Prime Minister of Beeston. It is his calling. He has such round, rotund, spherical body. He has a sting in his step that makes him a great leader. Oh, Small Ability. Oh, who comes here? It is my son, Small Ability. I'll try not to scare him upon my ghostly apparition image. Small Ability. Small Ability.
Oh, what a day it has been today. I have been involved in all of the areas of civil discourse. I have said wondrous things, clever things, but nobody quite seems to hear my voice. I protest and I ask for the things to be changed here, because people are not being treated right, forsooth. We are being treated as if we are common rats in a sewer slithering up the pipe. And I protest, but yet they do not listen.
Small Ability, stop your chatter. It is your mother. Ooh.
What ho! A ghostly apparition? But mother, you were cruelly stung to death by all of those bees, which, frankly, I can't blame them, for you did call them horrible names, but mother...
Small Ability, it is in your rite of passage, your future and your destiny. Although I named you Small Ability, you have big outlooks for the future. You must become the Prime Minister of Beeston and fulfill your destiny at whatever cost, or be struck down by 1 billion bees.
But mother, you know that I have a small ability at keeping things to myself. The honesty pours forth from me like a gravy on a Sunday dinner. The honesty comes like a fountain of truth, and I can't stop it, mother.
Be strong, Small Ability. It is up to you to change your destiny and your stars. The stars that go together like rain and London, devil and sins, fish and chips. This is your future. And that means you must stop at nothing and be focused on your track. Those traitors had better run and watch their backs.
All right, mother. I'll try, Mother. I'll try to keep myself to myself, and I will try not to be so cavalier, and I will try to keep my truths closer here.
Well, it's me, right here in front of the office again. I seem to be the only one that does any work here. Oh, there they are, making messes every single where. And I'll tidy it up. Hey, how about when you're at home? Do you just throw a banana skin on the floor or a piece of bread underneath your desk? I reckon not. But yeah, me, oh me, Molly Miss has to pick up after everyone. They're busy running the country, are they? They're busy running the country. They're busy running their mouths and running the funds of everyone else. We're the ones that really do the work, eh? Tell me one thing. If one of them were to take a day off of running the town or running the country, we'd be fine. But if I even took one day off cleaning up over this muck, they'll definitely be in lots of trouble.
Oh, Molly Miss, what a fantastic day to see you today. And you look less greasy than usual. Well done.
Stop it. You know you always make me blush. What are you doing here? You're not usually this early, even though you're earlier than them lot.
Well, Molly Miss, I have had a rumbling inside of me, a dastardly destiny that has bubbled forth, and I'm going to have to ask of you a favour, although I know you are the most just of all of the people that live here in our town, and of all of the people that work here in Beeston's council building. I must enter a room that I do not have the authority to do so. I need to get some information. And Molly Miss...
Listen here, SA. You're going to ask me to do some kind of thing that would make those that work here angry. Those that work here, they may even lose their jobs.
Molly Miss, I have to ask you. You must transgress the boundaries of your burden, of your job, of your calling, and allow me to enter that room. For if you do not, then I am afraid I cannot progress throughout this journey that we call life, and I cannot increase the happiness, the wealth, and the prosperity of the town that we see ourselves in. And frankly, if you don't, I will have to shank you.
Listen, Esther, small ability, you don't need to shank me. There's no need to do that at all. The fact that you're going to be putting one up to them the way they make a mess around there, you had me at hello. So you're going to need a key. So many keys. This is the one that you need. But remember, you didn't get it from me. And if you did say you got it from me, I'm going to deny it.
Right, I've got you. Thank you, Molly Miss.
And make sure you clean up your mess when you're gone. I'm not cleaning up after you as well.
I absolutely would not want to anger you. Don't worry about it. Okay.
And there you go.
Thank you. Entry to the room with the secrets that are held, and this shall be the truth that is furthermore yelled.
And that's the end of Act One. And what a brilliant and gripping political thriller it's turning out to be. You've been brilliant in the chat. We've got some great suggestions for props that we want to see in Act Two. We might hear some of these. We might see an elaborate trebuchet. We might see an animal sidekick. We might see a hat filled with milk or a suitcase filled with wine. By far the most popular choice, though, was Emma Whipday's suggestion of a magic porridge pot, possibly also poisoned porridge, that keeps producing porridge. So I think we definitely need to see the magic porridge pot in the next act. We've also had some very topical suggestions: a face mask, party invitations for civil servants, things of that variety. So we may see some of those. I think one thing we definitely want to see as Act Two progresses is a magic porridge pot. Here we go. Act Two.
Rah, 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 rah. Rah, 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 rah. As the current Prime Minister of Beeston, I'd like to thank you all for coming to my meeting. about how we can prosper. You know, something to do with bees is our thing. Really, I got this job through my looks alone and nepotism. Yes, it's a great thing being the son of the only Earl of Beeston. Rah, rah, rah. Well,
permission to speak there, Prime Minister of Beeston.
Permission granted, Miss.
I'm glad you have, because I've got words to say. You seem to be making these meetings longer and longer and longer, and I have many things to do with for my constituents. I need to help solve all the problems that they may have, and I may have a case of wine in my room that I need to work through as well. So the quicker the better, the quicker the better. Speed, haste, please, man, speed, haste. Oh.
Quite right. Any other orders of business, such as my cheese collection? Blue, Stinky, Stilton. I don't like the mild stuff. I'm all about going balls to the wall, everything. Fast. I have intelligent things to say.
Well, first things first, good Mayor of Beeston. I can see your wife is there with your new child. How many children have you got now?
The spawns and sprogs cannot lie. I do not know.
Right.
I'm very virile for my age.
Well, virile or careless, either or. Sir, I have come here to say there is displeasure within the communities. They feel that they are not being ruled justly, and they think that we're in here pretending we're having a work meeting when very clearly there are chips and dips, and it was a BYOB, bring your own, and I'm afraid I've got to agree.
Well, actually, it was a BYOP, bring your own porridge. I have put it out for everybody. I hope you enjoy. There's cinnamon, there's nutmeg, there's dastardly, scary rhubarb.
Right. Well, in that case, seeing as you seem so hard-headed and not open to listening, then let me give you a gift. Let me give both of you a gift. It was a sprinkling sent by one of your very loyal subjects. It is said to be the most delightful delicacy dashed from the faraway Damascus and taken slightly and silkenly and made into a delicious powder that will really blow your socks off. So if you would prefer your porridge bowls, please.
Oh, okay.
Here you go. Please enjoy, Mayor and the Right Honourable Pistleswith.
Thank you.
Well, once I had what felt like no taste buds, now my taste buds are alive, like the fire in the fiery pits of hell. Put that on the tin.
Who did share this with us? It seems quite scratchy in my throat.
Oh, it was none other than mystical Martha, the witch who lives in the coven at the end of the road.
It's the worst beans on toast.
Yes. Well, unfortunately, your beans are has-beens. For now, you will succumb to the injuries, internal and intestinal, that you deserve.
I feel like I've been hung, drawn and quartered like antibiotics. Oh, my innards. Oh.
Oh dear, it seems that with this deadly breakfast, dead are those that we do detest.
What a climax to Act 2 rather, that was. We're moving into the final act now, and there have been some brilliant suggestions into in the chat for a special effect for the final act. So just some of the suggestions we've had. An explosion takes off someone's eyebrows. Transfiguration into some other creature. The Prime Minister turns into a wild boar, or perhaps he's chased by a syringe. Honey rain was one suggestion. The appearance appearance of a ghost, a wine fountain, an entrance from under the stage, presumably a trapdoor, or pyrotechnics. The return of the ghost is a suggestion that's just been made. So we might see at least one of those, perhaps more than one. Pyrotechnics, entrance from under the stage, wine fountain, ghost, some kind of horrible thing happening to the Prime Minister, a transfiguration, or an explosion. Who knows? The improvisers will pick from that list as they perform Act 3. Here we go.
Oh, great. Leave it to Molly Miss to clean all this up. Dead bodies everywhere. Oh, great. Was that in my contract in the parchment that they had put before me? A parchment, nothing was put before me. But don't worry, Molly Miss will get it done for you. Oh, I remembered when I was young. I had such ambition. I was a great singer. I was a great dancer. I was a great everything. And now sometimes I feel like I'm a great mess. They never used to call me Molly Miss. They used to just call me MM. And then those people that were very fond of me would just call me Oh, those are the days when they called me What was that?
It's me, Prime Minister. Buzz, 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 buzz. The porridge has made me into a bee. Buzz, 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 buzz. Help me! Don't squat me! I'm the Prime Minister.
Do my eyes deceive me? I thought I saw a dead body down there, but actually an apparition of some kind of winged, disgusting wizard is there. Prime Minister, that's you, a bee?
It's me. I need to get in touch with someone. I can't run the country like this. People won't take me seriously. When I was a big man, people thought all my thoughts were brilliant. Now I'm a bee.
Well.
Molly Miss.
There, Prime Minister.
Molly Miss.
Molly Miss.
Yeah?
I've got the password. Honey rain, honey rain, honey rain, honey rain. Can I come in?
Of course you can. And I've got the Prime Minister stuck in this glass. Oh!
Molly, I've brought me witch mates with me. I didn't want you to have to do all of the tidying up. So me and the coven here, the big C, they're going to come and they're going to clear up all of the mess. I'm really sorry. I said I wouldn't make a mess and I didn't keep my promise.
Listen. When it comes to you, you're sweet of heart, sweet of mind, and sweet of tongue as well. I don't mind clean up all of it after you because it is my job and you give me a bit of respect. But ladies, oh, the big C, how honoured I am. Actually, when I was younger, I was good at singing, I was good at dancing, I was good at so many things, but really I wanted to become a witch.
Oh, well, I'm sure that the gals would love you on the team. You're so brilliant. And now I can be the Mayor of Beeston, but I need to speak to the current one who's currently cleaning pollen off his back legs and doing a waggle dance.
Oh, right. Are you sure you want me to let him out?
What's he going to do? Sting me then die? That would be a foolish thing forsooth.
True say that. Right, I'll let him out and I'll just make sure I guard the door. There you go.
Listen. You know what happens? If you do the stinging, you do the dying. So hold up.
What do you have to say for yourself, small ability?
Well, that's a fine thing for a mini beast to say, for someone so small that I could squash them with my fist or the heel of my shoe. But, sir, I have this to say. I do not wish to be a murderer. I mean, accidentally, I did kill the other council person, so they're dead. That's undoable now. But you transfigured, as we had hoped. And I've come to say this, if you make me the Mayor of Beeston and let me lead verily and truthfully forward and with love and kindness, I will allow you your own hive. But if you do not, I will squash you dead and I'll go, die, like that. That's what I'll do.
Well, you might be allergic, but I take on board what you say. We both might die, and I don't want you to end this tragically, because bees are best, as we all know. And I guess what you're suggesting is you're making me the Prime Minister of my own hive, so I'm still in power. Is that right?
Yes, indeed, sir. It will be a parliament of bees, and you will be the lord and purveyor of all that you see.
Then we both benefit.
Yes. I'm glad that you take this honour and this dictate. Now
Okay.
let me take you to your hive before it is too late.
There we go. I seem to have stumbled upon some kind of case of wine. So if you don't mind, I've made some kind of pointed structure. I don't know what it's called. And I've put the wine at the top, and it's going to just cascade down as if it were raining or some kind of waterfall or something like that. So since all those that were making such a mess at last, they are now at a rest, maybe you, me, and the coven and everybody else can have a little bit of this wine. And the story will be fine.
Fantastic, fantastic. Let's have a glass of vino and let's tell the people so that they all know.
Round of applause, I would say, for all of those wonderful actors. Good work indeed. Yes.
Well done, everyone. That was fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. Thank you. Unbelievably, we're at the end of the event. Who knew that BYOB stands for Bring Your Own Bee? I've learned something. I've learned something there. And the UK currently has a prime minister who can't tell the difference between a work event and a party. And I like to think that our first A Bit Lit event also, it wasn't quite clear all the time if we were working or if we were partying. But I hope we were mostly partying. Shakespeare, Jimmy, what are you taking away from today's event? Maybe let's start with Shakespeare, with Jimmy.
Well, look, I really enjoyed my tour of the Curtain Playhouse. I thought it was brilliant. I loved hearing about the traffic and the weather, and I really enjoyed hearing Shakespeare talking about marketing when he was talking about play titles.
Yes, indeed.
How about you, Shakespeare?
Oh, I had a marvelous time. I would say I also enjoyed the weather reports and your roving reporting, Jimmy. I think you'll be a wonder. I think I'm going to definitely work on Messenger number 4 as a fully formed 5-act piece. Yes,
I look forward to it.
And you'll be marvelous as Messenger 4. I had a lovely time. I learned so much, and it was lovely to meet all of these people who are so creative and ingenious. Who knew an audience could also provide such input into theatre?
And it just remains for me to say, as Messenger 5, thank you, all of you, for coming along to join us. We're so grateful. I'd like to say a special thank you to James Opry, our producer, to Liam and Ben, who've been doing our BSL translation, and to S. Grange, who's been doing our audio description. And a quick shout out to the Universities of Newcastle and Exeter, who have brought groups to the event. It's lovely to have you here. Some people will be watching this as a recording after the event, so hello to you as well. And finally, thank you to all of you for joining us here live. It's been a total delight to have you. Thank you so very much.